Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Spotlight On series, designed to showcase some of Innovate Finance's most exciting early stage fintech members and highlighting emerging trends across the fintech ecosystem. Today, we're discussing next gen fintech, AI in action. Let me start by introducing our amazing guest speakers. We're joined by Daniel Callis, founder and CEO of Beyla. Daniel is a founder and CEO of Beyla, where he is building an AI native operating system for SMEs, a former banking leader with more than 25 years of experience in financial services. He's led global payments and transaction banking businesses across Europe and Asia. He's now combining a fully connected neobank layer with a broader agentic intelligence and execution platform to help businesses manage cash flow, payments, risk, growth decisions, and operational workflows more proactively. Thank you for joining us, Daniel, today.
Good to be here. Thanks, Jacita.
We're also joined by Pritam Basu, founder and CEO of Boseman. Pritam is an experienced fintech operator and investor with a background spanning credit, payments, and investment platforms. Through Boseman, he focuses on building and backing next gen financial services infrastructure and intelligence layers that are shaping how financial services are delivered globally. Great to have you with us today, Pritam.
Great to be here. Thanks, Joshita.
Thank you. So let's dive into the conversation. So I think it'll be really good for us to go through your company and your what you're working on. So let me start with you, Daniel. Daniel, can you tell us about your journey behind Bela and how you're building an AI native business operating system for SMEs?
Yeah, no, happy to. So I guess let me start off with the genesis of Beyla because Beyla is the goddess of agriculture, pollination, and bees. So if you think about the hive mind, what we're building is a collective intelligence layer that actually supports and grows. So if you think about how nature has sort of a hive system of bees or ants working together as a community, we're using digital intelligence, so artificial intelligence, along with traditional infrastructure to build collective intelligence, which helps us operate the business. But actually, more importantly, for our customers or our members, as we call them, we can actually use that intelligence to help them grow their business, connect to different ecosystems, and effectively protect the hive and grow their business in a proactive way. And if you think about finance today, generally it's a reactive proposition. Me as a customer, if I'm an individual or as a business, I have to go to my bank, I have to go to my payment company, I have to tell it what to do. And I may use an app, I may use a website, I may, if I can find a branch, I may go into the branch and say, hey, I'm Daniel, I want to grow my business. And effectively the response back is press some buttons or fill out a form. And what we want to do is use that intelligence. So what we know about the customer, what we know about their ecosystem, and how we can help them grow their business going forward, connecting all of those dots, connecting all those levers, and actually saying to our customers proactively, hey, you've got this fantastic business. You've got these customers around here. You've got this opportunity over here. How can we help you to grow? How can we help you to move into that space using what we know about you? So not providing advice, but to actually providing insights and helping them longer term to actually physically operate. So we're building, as you mentioned, a new layer of effectively banking or infrastructure that actually can act on behalf of our customers. So our members will have agents that work as part of our business for them proactively to actually help them move money, to invest money, to take out credit, all through a secure layer, which has been tested by people like the FCA and is regulated around a secure environment for business growth.
Thank you, Daniel. I think it's really interesting around the framing around the name as well. I thought that was really exciting and interesting, and it's very important work, especially when you're supporting the SMEs. So thank you for that. And Preetham, coming to you now. So with your experience across credit, payments, and investment platforms, what motivated your focus on building and backing the next gen fintech solutions?
Well, so we're like roughly over 9 years old now, and before that, I actually started my career in the financial markets. I used to be a equity derivatives trader, and that was really a great sort of lesson in how the financial system worked. How the banks worked, how active investment management worked, how the hedge funds work. Um, and there were a lot of sort of problems I spotted, and there were lots of examples of poor technology, and you could just see all sorts of things where, at least like from a consumer perspective, the consumer didn't get the best the best deals. So products were bad, and fees were too expensive, and there's just a lot of opportunity to rebuild things. And so uh, we started the company actually. We actually got our first customer before the company was started. So that's kind of how it came about. And we didn't want to just sort of build things. We wanted to sort of be a combination like of a builder, product and engineering firm plus investor. So that's how we got started. And we mainly focus on the US, LATAM, a bit of Europe, and also Japan. And more recently, especially after sort of AI has opened up opportunities. We've started a brand new division that spun off. It's actually called Moneymark, and it's entirely focused on building. So to get to top grade regulated financial AI, where to be able to build it, we're going to have the data layer plus the evaluation layer of it. And so that whole division, Money Mark, is focused on building human data, gathering structured data, and building, what they call reinforcement learning environments to test out, the pre-trained foundation models. So yeah,
Thank you, Pritam. I think it's a lot of exciting work happening there. And you've been members with us for a long time. So thank you for that support and
yeah,
exciting to see that journey as well. So that brings us to the next conversation where we look at the sort of fintech landscape that you're seeing now. So, to the both of you, really, looking at the broader sort of landscape, what are the key shifts currently reshaping fintech that founders and institutions should be paying more attention to?
Yeah, happy to take that. And I
Yeah.
think it sort of links into what Pritam was saying. For me, and we're in this AI bubble at the moment in terms of, and what I mean by bubble is from a media perspective. I don't think it is a bubble in terms of from an investment perspective, but everything's about AI right now. And understanding because of what we're seeing in terms of the opportunity, the way the progress is in terms of the models are moving and changing and how quickly they're iterating. And I think that's really important as part of financial services being part of that. I also think it's quite challenging for financial services being part of that because financial services typically as an industry has grown and evolved over many, many years, decades, with layering of technology. And so typically where a company has their platform, they don't throw that away and start with a new platform, throw it away, they start with a new platform. As technology changes, they iterate and they grow and they develop. One of the challenges that when I set out to sort of build Beyla is I didn't want to take an existing technology stack as if I was building sort of a bank as of that point, which is about 18 months ago, and try and launch that as Beyla because that stack was sort of built over the last 10 years. What we needed to build was what's going to be built over the next 10 years. And that's a challenging market because things are moving quickly. But if I'm putting myself in a position of an existing financial services company, an existing bank, or an existing payment company, a lot of my technology has quite a bit of legacy in there. And how do I try and put AI into that? And that for me is an interesting area because putting AI into that isn't as simple as connecting up a model to your existing infrastructure and just letting it run. Because of those layers and those complexities, it's how do you really think about what do I need for the future? And I think mentioning what sort of Pritam was talking about, sort of those sort of the evaluations of that and how all those different layers work together, where is the data? That is a big question still to be answered, I think.
Thank you, Daniel. I think that's very, very important as the points that you touched on data. It goes a long way. And Preetham, do you have anything to add at all?
yeah. I think like Daniel said, so the key shift is sort of the possibilities we have with AI, in particular, with agents, um, and how businesses will be able to uh, sort of harness the power of agents. One of the things we hear is like there are a lot of POCs going on, and everyone's trying to sort of work out their workflows and try to get agents to work. But the big sort of recurring thing we hear from people like, people in PE to investment management, etc., is that they're concerned about the sort of non-deterministic element of agents and the fact that it cannot be expected to do exactly the same sort of set of actions given uh, sometimes the same input, right? And so I think working through this uh, sort of flow of trying to strategize how your agent's going to work and making it the right combination of deterministic and being able to rely on it, and also being able to sort of take sound decisions when needed. That's going to be one of the sort of key areas within companies. I think AI in general like just poses two simple questions to most companies, which is how is this going to change your business and how is this going to change your product? And finance is actually a business where we have a lot of people doing manual repetitive tasks, and that adds to the cost of banking. And it also actually adds sort of a kind of it helps. It sort of doesn't help you scale because you have to wait for all these sort of processes to be put in place, and so in a way, harnessing power of agents and getting them to work would remove a barrier to scale for companies. And it would also, we reckon, possibly help compress costs in banking. So you could potentially, get services at even better costs now. And FinTech we've seen and, has really helped with bringing costs down for consumers from like Forex to all sorts of things. So I think this is like the main area, agents where banks are working on, and companies like Beyla are going to be tremendously useful.
100%. Yes, Pritam. I think you've really led me on to my next question and you made that easy for me. So thank you. So now that we've talked about the sort of landscape that you're seeing, that you're actively operating in, I think we should also discuss more about the challenges and opportunities. So Daniel, let me pick your brain on this one. So what have you been seeing the key challenges in building an AI native agent-driven financial operating system from the ground up?
Yeah, so I think one of the challenges being, and this is not me being grandiose with this, but we're the first people really taking this on from the ground up,
Wow.
in a sense of building what I sort of call it, not really, it's not really a neobank, it's not really an AI company, it's something in between. So we don't necessarily stop at banking, we can actually broaden out across into different areas of industry. And that's exciting, but it's also challenging when I'm speaking with investors, when I'm speaking with the regulators. And in the UK's framework, the FCA have been really supportive of us. We've been through the AI Supercharged Sandbox and the Smart Data Accelerator. So we've got a really great working relation with the FCA. And I
That's
can't say
great.
anything bad about them in a sense of innovation, because they really have opened up and sort of said, how can we put safe and responsible AI on the fore? So that I'm not talking about the regulatory framework, the business landscape of running a business and the broader red tape is a challenge, I'll be honest. And that's one of the things we want to solve for certainly our SME marketplace. Doing business in the UK as an entrepreneur is tough. You're generally in a small team, you're trying to get off the ground, you've got many hats and many plates spinning. And sort of how do you do these things whilst trying to keep your focus on where you want to go, your North Star? And so one of the reasons we want to really have Beyla not only work for us internally, but work for our companies. So the members that use Beyla going forward effectively will have a digital C-suite. So a CFO function within that, a COO function helping operational. So taking away a lot of that admin activity. So if I can remove some of this stuff that isn't really adding direct value to my business, but gets done properly, gets done securely, and is helping me focus on my customer, that's super powerful for me. And that's an interesting area. So how do we help and as an entrepreneurial group and working with Innovate Finance and Innovate UK, putting forward to the government around sort of a lot of this red tape. We're seeing things coming in like making tax digital, which you can think, oh, that's going to be good. It's digital. But actually, there's a lot
Yeah.
of process that goes with that. So it's not as though it's a simple, I hit a button and everything's fully automated. How do entrepreneurs get that information in? How do they work with those systems? All of that stuff is really quite difficult whilst you're trying to grow a business.
Yeah, I think thank you for giving that overview. I think many of the fintech founders will probably resonate with that, and it's also great to hear that we have a very supportive regulator here in the UK. And Pritam, coming to you, where do you currently see the biggest opportunities for innovation and value creation across fintech globally? Because I know you operate on a global scale, so where are you seeing these biggest opportunities?
So I actually think we're still in very early days with respect to financial services AI or finance-based AI. We haven't seen any of the sort of major frontier labs come up with anything remarkable in finance. We know a lot of them, like, Anthropic sits with the banks and they've been trying to build all sorts of things. And, XAI has this division sort of focusing on various verticals within finance, but nothing's actually being produced that you can see. At the same time, I think uh, in London and other places which are sort of have a concentration of great sort of fintechs and financial service companies, this creates a big opportunity to build custom models with data that already sits within fintechs, maybe even some open banking data. Um, and Revolut is actually a great example of this when they released Pragma, which is their own foundation model, and it's
Yeah.
trained on something like I don't know, 25 million odd of their own customers, and
Wow.
they've used their internal data, sort of transaction data,
Yeah.
maybe like your stock buys and your app event data, and they've fed that into sort of uh, a transform architecture, which is essentially, the same thing backing LLMs, but it's not natural language. And they've got like significant improvements in across a number of sort of metrics that they were tracking, like credit decisioning, where they were trying to predict how often a customer defaults. That was up, something like 130% in accuracy. Um, and fraud as well, remarkable improvements. And these were not, at least in the scale of foundation models, they were not the most expensive models to build.
Mm.
I think Pragma used something like 64 GPUs, and they produce like I think a 10 million, 100 million, and 1 billion parameter model. And to be honest, even for some of the uh, improvements they noticed, the 10 million and 100 million parameter models were sufficient to see like improvements. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for current fintechs and banks if they can sort of get their data together to build these custom foundation models. Um, Besides that, like, us for a long time, we've been huge sort of proponents of trying to build what we call autonomous finance, right? When we were building products in different countries, we'd go and, before the product and when the product launches, we'd be speaking to consumers and doing all these sort of interviews with customers. And we just came up with this recurring sort of pattern that we saw, which is a lot of people actually knew what the right thing to do with respect to their finances was, but they weren't doing it. So we were sort of trying to figure out why people don't do it if they know. And we came to the conclusion that money is quite emotional and it's boring and it's a chore for most people. So if we're going to try to solve, you know, sort of financial management, then some base layer of automation for people, which can smartly sort of allocate your savings, maybe invest a bit for you, at least at a base level, that would be super useful. And now that's looking possible. And there are companies that have actually pledged to that. So a lot of fintechs, especially the fintechs with open banking data, a lot of them are saying we're going to produce like a financial advisor eventually. And at least on the automation front, I think Clio has committed to it and said they're going to have an autopilot of sorts. So I think that sort of feature is very interesting for
Yeah.
consumers.
Yeah, 100%. As a consumer, I think that sounds really exciting because that's where you really need support and help. So if AI is doing that, then that sounds really exciting. So I know that you both touched on a little bit on this. So for the both of you, the next question is how is the industry really evolving from, as you may have seen in the past, from standalone financial products towards more connected? Because I know you've talked about open banking and smart data. So, how are we moving towards a more connected and intelligent financial ecosystems?
Yeah, let me kick off with that perhaps.
Right.
And I really see that part of those traditional industry sort of verticals start going sort of more horizontal, because historically banking would sit in one area, you'd have your sort of different legal would sit in another, marketing operations, you'd have lots of different companies focused on different areas. And I see that sort of finance ultimately is one of the you can't run a business without payments. Ultimately, payment services has never really been the sexiest product in the world of financial services, but it's the only product or sort of operation that no business can do without, because you can't run a business without paying or getting paid ultimately. So if I think about that sort of movement and money layer, that can go across into different areas of the ecosystem and the connections between those. And I think we'll probably come on to this maybe slightly later. But why are you making the payment? Why are you getting paid? Because you're providing a service typically. And why are you paying? Because someone else is providing a service to you. And how can those services have context and understanding around how you can grow your own company, how you can, from a fraud perspective, ensure that the transactions are true, valid, and in line with the requirements and regulations. And if you're a bank, that's super important, because one of the big challenges today as a financial service company, you only really see the instruction right at the last moment. When I want to debit my account and pay to Jacita, a message comes across with a very small amount of information, effectively an instruction. The
Yeah.
banks don't really get to see what happened before that. There may have been 2 weeks of a conversation around our services, whatever all of that stuff is sort of away from the banking lens. And one of the reasons we see as a huge opportunity for our customers is we're in front of that, because we're working with our companies and our members on a proactive basis daily, helping them get to make the payments. We can see what is happening around their business, where these items are hitting finance, and actually help them proactively say to well, these are safe and secure transactions which are valid and important to your business. From a banking perspective, I can look to say, okay, well, are they creating a risk to our industry? And as Pritam mentioned, Revolut had been looking at their models and understanding what data, and I've not gone into the detail of what they have, obviously, because it's proprietary to them. But I'd imagine they'd be seeing lots of red flags within that data that they can utilize to help other companies within their ecosystem to not be defrauded, to make better decisions, to look at best practice. And that I think is really exciting, connecting up all those different areas, because that data is has a value not only in terms of monetization of selling new products, but actually how can you protect what you currently have and ensure your members have a much better customer experience, they have a much better insight around the data and the transactions that they're happening, so everyone can be more informed.
100%. I think there's a lot of potential there. And Preetham, do you have anything to add on this topic?
Yeah, so it's a it's a it's a kind of interesting thing to think about. I think at an institution level or a fintech level, if you're like say a Starling or a Revolut, you connecting up, all the various things a customer does and says through chat, through the actions on the app, etc., and tying it to their financial life and advising them is an easier task than sort of building a sort of brain that can connect to that sees all your different financial apps, and then um, trying to find meaning and intelligence through that. I'm sure someone will attempt to build one at some stage that can connect to sort of all your products. But just playing around with some of these chat things that have been released by Starling and Revolut. If you go to Revolut Air, you can. It's not just about asking it questions on products and features
Yeah.
on the product. You can actually ask questions like, I'm saving for my first house deposit. How do I do this? And it'll look through your account and tell you things. You could say things like, I'm worried about, the situation in the world today. Energy prices are going to go up. How can
Yeah.
I afford to pay my energy bills? And it will literally show you categories on where you're spending and what you can cut out from those categories. So we're already beginning to see uh, some people launching products like that, and I think it's pretty powerful. Um,
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of problems to solve before we get to like a sort of almost like a orchestration of your financial life layer that connects to all your accounts. Because there are all sorts of things to solve for, but I think it's going to happen at some point. And then of course, like I mentioned this before when I was on the podcast actually, we're huge fans of like having an on-device financial advisor, uh, which
Yeah.
means it sits on your phone or your computer. Um, Nobody else sees what's on it. You can ask it and share your data with it, and it's completely private, and nobody sees it. And we think that's becoming more possible as well now because the sizes of the models are getting smaller and smaller.
Yeah, I think that sounds very exciting, especially with the younger generation. I think that'll be really useful for them to navigate through their sort of financial lives as well. So there's a lot of possibilities there as well. So I know that we talked on connections and connecting intelligent financial ecosystems, and of course that connection is possible with data and intelligence around that. So let's start with Pritam actually. So how are you seeing these fintechs improving decision making through better use of data and the financial infrastructure they're building today?
It depends, right? So there's some companies that are moving really fast, implementing usually fintech companies. Uh, we've already spoken about Revolut, but Ramp, which is like a US company. I'm
Yeah.
sure Daniel's quite familiar with them. And they sort of help. They sort of produce tools that help you automate a lot of the financial tasks in your business. But internally, they've produced this product called Glass, which all their employees are using now, and that's greatly improved productivity for them. Um, so I think they're going to be companies that do use their data well. They're going to be companies where the data is sitting in all sorts of old systems, and
Yeah.
they're really stuck on trying to figure out how to get it out and sort of uh, you know feed it into a model or build agents with it. Uh, but the ones that move fast, you're gonna see a lot of productivity gains and product gains, and we reckon even like sort of pricing gains where they can price more efficiently. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that insight. So Daniel, coming to you, how do you see AI native systems like Beyla that you're building enabling businesses to operate with a continuous and a contextual intelligence, especially now that you're working with a lot of SMEs?
Yeah, for us, that context is super important because ultimately that enables our agents to work with an understanding of the business. So they're not expecting the business owners to come to them with a fresh prompt every day, and they take that prompt and they go away and work, and they sit there waiting for the next one. This is an sort of an evolving platform that has memory and it has context linkage to the business day-to-day operations. And the way we do that is via not necessarily trying to build everything ourselves and try and dominate the entire ecosystem, but by working as part of an ecosystem. So
Yeah.
we've built and spent a lot of time building connectors. So we've got about 400 or so connectors into different platforms that companies are using. So things like Zero, for example, or
Yeah.
Sage, or QuickBooks, or Workday. So we can effectively, our agents and our platform sits at the heart of the company, working with the business owners and the business users, and actually gets information from those systems without having to be fed by it, or fed manually by the users. And that's important because what it's enabling Beyla to act is like part of the team. So effectively, it's actually working alongside as members of your team. So you have digital or virtual members that understand a lot of information about your business. When they have that understanding and you ask questions or you want to understand how can I do this, you don't have to start again and repeat that instruction. And they can, with that context understanding, you can be having a conversation with our digital CFO, for example, and it helps you to proactively fill in the gaps of what you don't know. It can help you to highlight those risks and those red flags. It can show you the cash flow statements of where you're long and where you're short upcoming. And that's not necessarily not next week. That could be 3 months out, 6 months out. And it allows SMEs to be much longer dated in terms of their view and their insight around the business, which is really important because one of the big challenges for SMEs is that you're running so fast and doing so many different things. Cash flow is often very short dated. So you're worrying about what's happening next week or next month potentially, and that hits you really quickly. So if you do have an issue and you have an event where you need to get funding, it's much easier to go to a lender and say, I need funding in 3 months or 6 months' time than it is I need it next week. So
Yeah.
the prices you get are different, the opportunity you get is different. So that context and that connectivity into systems is really important. The way we can then help drive those systems by having those connections in. So rather than our agents saying, this is what you need to do, and then I have to do it myself, it can actually take that task for me. I still
Yeah.
need to approve it. So it's not going to do anything which is from making a change that isn't going to be is fully autonomous and it runs off and it changes everything
Yeah.
without me saying so. It will need to come back and I need to approve it as the business, the responsible person within the business. So similar, if you're making a payment, you do a fingerprint, a face ID. That is my confirmation that it's been done, and I have full visibility of that. And that enables us to be able to help those businesses proactively to move forward and help them to grow.
I think that sounds really interesting, especially with the human intervention where you know what's happening, you're aware, but you're also using the intelligence at the same time. Because as you rightly said, SMEs are always juggling multiple priorities. So that'll be useful to have as well. So now that we've discussed about the data and the intelligence behind that for decision making, of course, at some point in their sort of growth stage, fintech companies would like to scale and scale globally. So, how do you think the balance of innovation with reliability, adaptability, and user trust can really shape that?
Oh, good question.
It's for the both of you.
I think it's interesting because we've seen recently over the last few weeks, there's been quite a few large scale, let's say, non-trustworthy events which have happened where things have been leaked and information goes out and
Yeah,
agents have done things they shouldn't have done.
yeah,
And that is a reputational impact to the industry. There's
yeah,
no doubt about that. So, oh, do I trust that agent? Is it going to delete my database? Is it going to publish everything on Reddit and effectively so that hasn't helped in some ways. Perhaps the firms that have done that have been big enough and leading the market enough not to be so affected by it, but it puts an ambiguity into what does an agent really do. For us, that's really critical because what we're building is we don't want autonomous agents running off and doing things that they shouldn't be doing without that one full visibility so we can see what is happening, why it's happening. So there's no black box involved that it just does it. We're not quite sure why, but actually we can see all those various different steps and tasks so they work within a framework. Secondly, that you need to formally approve that. So effectively we have that confirmation. Yes, Daniel approved that task. The agent took an undertaking and then it was confirmed back. That is super important as we work through that. I'm not a big fan of we need AI regulation in place because that's too broad. And the
Yeah.
big challenge of regulation generally, and if we see this across all regulated industries, things still happen that aren't great in those industries. The
Yeah.
regulator comes along generally behind the scenes and puts fines in place or everything. It doesn't stop the bad stuff happening. What we want to do is how do we have the good stuff happen from day one so we can get in front of the bad actors? Because one of the big challenges we do have is these models are being used by people for nefarious activities as well. So one of the reasons we want from a financial service is how can we get AI to in front of that? So if you do have rogue states or people that are using it to try and defraud, actually you have a smarter AI in front of that that fights the AI. The big
Mm.
challenge when you say, oh, human in the loop, actually, to my mind, human in the loop is often one of the weakest points because human nature, we're not consistent. I may be on top of my
Yeah.
game one day. I may wake up with a cracking headache. I may not have slept that night. I may walk into the office, press a button. Oh, I should have pressed that button. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not infallible. AI isn't infallible at this stage. So it's a work in process. But I'd much rather we use it powerfully for preventative than
Yeah.
just so, oh, we can't use it at all because people will be using it to try and attack us.
Yeah, 100%. To err is human. So yeah, makes a lot of sense there. I think you've also brilliantly led to the next question on regulation and responsible AI. So now that we're all talking about this in all sort of sectors, not only in fintech but everywhere because it's everywhere. So how are you seeing these evolving sort of regulatory frameworks shaping the development and deployment of AI in financial services? And how do you think we should be responsible with it? Should we go with Pritam first?
Yeah, so I actually think like Daniel mentioned, regulation can be very broad and it can be
Yeah.
premature, and it can like stifle innovation if you bring it in too quickly. But I actually think the FCA is doing some great work in the space. Both of you probably know Colin Payne, who heads like
Yes.
innovation there. Um, Thankfully for us, he actually really understands the opportunity. And I've been in, I've seen him a number of times now in roundtables, small events, on panel discussions. And he and the FC in general are very pragmatic about sort of the balance to uh, enable it without throttling it. And I think there are going to be challenges and problems to solve. But running the experiments are kind of necessary to figure that out, and having all these sort of schemes done by the FCA and is really helpful in getting that balance right. So I think we're in probably the right sort of trade-off space right now.
That's very positive to hear and also very reassuring to hear. But Daniel, is there anything you'd like to add on to
You
this?
know, so I fully agree. The FCA, I think, have got exactly the right mentality around what they want to do, engaging with companies, creating AI sandboxes that enable you to look at compute and different partners as part of those, which support early stage companies getting
Yeah.
access to resourcing, but not only resourcing, but actually knowledge and mentors that they may not have without that sort of framework. I think the other area which is interesting is the global nature. Obviously, we're building within not just the UK framework, we're building within a global economy and financial services which spread across many different regions and states and markets. And that's quite interesting because AI means different things to different people, or there's different parts of AI. Because if you think about it from a model and a frontier perspective, really you've got sort of the American firms, so the big sort of hyperscalers and the Chinese AI firms really leading the way. So
Yeah.
they're really the two powerhouses in terms of China and America. But also data, where does data sit and sovereignty of data? And you've got markets which don't want their data to go offshore. So there's lots of different components of what do you need to run a safe and secure AI system. I guess if we're putting my UK hat on and looking at really what we want to do, we've got sort of the focus on sovereign AI here, which I think is powerful. But for me,
Yeah.
it's around how can we look at protecting our consumers in the best way? How can we be in front of that to utilize what we know of the financial network, which for me is a electronic money institution path, is around sort of payments in that space. And how can we ensure that the regulations are relevant to the business operating in that space? We want to be regulated, and we're on an active path to put in place with the regulator the right framework to launch our regulated service, which would be a neobank. So effectively, an electronic money institution which enables our members to hold accounts for us to make payments, issue debit cards, etc. We then can control all of those movements ourselves without relying on a third party bank, which effectively gets out of our zone of control. So that enables us to be in a space where we're much more able to control that and know what our agent's doing. As soon as an agent sends a message to a third party, you rely on those different protocols in place. So we want to ensure that we can protect our companies, ourselves, and grow the market through safe and responsible AI. And I think that's really important for the next stage. We've seen some other areas of sort of quasi financial services, things such as crypto and blockchain, sort of sitting outside. I think more as they come in, there'll be an interesting discussion around the stable coins form part of this. Where does that fit within the ability for agents to do different activities? I don't think it's a requirement, but it will be an interesting space over the next 5 or so years.
Yes, 100%. It is definitely going to be interesting. And I think we're nearly there towards the end of this session. But of course, it's always good to end on a note where we're looking ahead and what are the trends that you're seeing, especially now that everything is changing at a very fast pace, as you mentioned, Daniel, as well. So looking ahead to 2030, quite exciting. What foundational shift do you think will most redefine how these financial services products are built, delivered, and experienced for consumers?
I can start with that.
Yeah.
So I think our idea really is, which we hope has been made possible now through sort of AI advances and what's going to come after LLMs and transformers, is sort of this whole autonomous finance thing where uh, people do find finance quite boring and a chore. So we hope, like, at least by 2030, a number of things in finance are just things that happen around us. Uh, in certain cases with human oversight, and in certain cases it will be AI versus AI. And the main case that would be fraud, because you can't actually have a human in the loop with fraud. It's just too slow, and we essentially need AI systems combating other AI systems trying to attempt fraud. Um, and I think that's like sort of the main thing that we want to see, like a lot of finance happening autonomously, which will a lot of banks having agents running internally, and that will in turn compress costs, and the consumer gets better value, and banks run more efficiently.
That sounds exciting. And Daniel, what do you think?
Yeah, so I think by 2030, our vision certainly is that we have Beyla is able to provide to our members effectively a supercharge to their business. So effectively working with a digital team of team members that support them, help them to grow, that fully work as though they are a full-time member of their team, working effectively for the betterment of that business, connected across all of the areas of that business, which enables the operators and the owners to really focus on the things that drive the value for them, which is their customer. So it doesn't matter across industry in terms of how can the user experience change to allow me as a business owner to focus on what I want to deliver, which is my passion, which is my business, my customer, the interaction of that, without having to spend all the time on the administrative stuff that gets in the way. The systems are smart enough to help me invest my money to take the right loans without being penalized or getting a bad deal. And effectively, the intelligence it creates, it just brings our level up. So we get smarter, we get more focused around what we can do, and the opportunities just open out from what we currently have today. Because the big challenge, we have a lot of very smart entrepreneurs in the business or in the country trying to run businesses, trying to get them off the ground. They just can't get that. That is a really tough task for many people without the resourcing and the funding. Having this support alongside them that is helping them, pushing them forward with the right responsible nature, I think that allows us to sort of level up to a stage we've never seen in the past when we've had a new technology come across, which is so sort of horizontal and so proactive if we build it properly.
Thank you, Daniel, and thank you, Pritam. I see a lot of passion and ambition and exciting initiatives from both of you. So thank you, Daniel and Pritam, for sharing your insights today. And thank you all, listeners, for tuning in. Our Spotlight On series will be available to watch on demand. So please tune in and enjoy. See you soon in our next episode.